This is Witch-based news for Friday the 31st of January 2025. I'm Commander Buur. In Elite Dangerous news this week, Frontier announced the name and launch date for the Colonisation update. A new exploration community goal is giving an excellent pre-engineered module reward, and the board at Frontier speak about elite success and the future that now lays before it. If you enjoy our videos, consider subscribing to the channel and remember to ping the little bell to make sure you see all our content and community posts. And if you'd like to help support our channel, links to our Patreon and everything else are in the description below. In a surprise move yesterday, Frontier announced not only the name of the next update to arrive in Elite Dangerous, but also the date that you can expect it. In case you've been living on a quiet moon somewhere with no Wi-Fi, the next big update to Elite Dangerous will be introducing the much anticipated Colonisation feature that we've spoken about on this very channel before, following its announcement late last year. When the Type 8 arrived last year, Frontier changed their naming policy for updates, and so rather than having a somewhat generic numerical format, the updates to the game now come with an altogether more interesting moniker instead. For the Type 8 it was the Type 8 update, for the Mandalay and the Power Play the update was called Ascendancy, then we had the Cobra Mark V update, and now for the arrival of Colonisation in the game we will be getting the Trailblazers update. Whilst it wasn't explicitly stated in the announcement, Frontier have previously stated that Colonisation will be launching directly into the live game, but that they consider its arrival to be a beta. So there's no plan to wipe anyone's progress or systems colonised once the final numbers associated with the new features have settled down, but what range is available to colonise from at the start, or how much a colonisation expansion ultimately costs, will almost certainly not be the same as where they started when it comes down to the end of the beta period. Things are going to change, numbers are going to shift. This is obviously a somewhat strange way of beta testing a new feature in the game, but I'm guessing it's being handled this way so that FDev can see how the numbers stack up in real world use and adjust off the back of that. Were this a more traditional beta with progress being wiped at the end, players might not be inclined to use the feature to its fullest, knowing that their efforts were all in vain. Think of it as kind of like a sort of live beta and go in with your expectations set accordingly and expecting things to settle down in the longer term. To follow up the news of the imminent arrival of Colonisation, a new community goal started in the game yesterday, sponsored by the in-game NPC faction Brewer Logistics, asking for exploration data to be handed in to Universal Cartographics aboard the megaship Trailblazer Echo in the HIP 90578 system. The CG is set to run for a couple of weeks, but such has been the response to its arrival that FDev today added a couple of tiers on top of their original estimates to ensure that as many folks have the chance to contribute as possible, and contributing is absolutely worth it. Anyone who contributes even once to the CG will, upon its completion, receive a detailed surface scanner pre-engineered with expanded probe scanning radius, so it's absolutely worth contributing a couple of minor honks at the very minimum just to get that. And the final part of the announcement, the Trailblazers update is arriving in the game on Wednesday the 26th of February, less than a month from now. Following up on Frontier's half-yearly results report to the London stock market last week, we got a look this week at the video presentation given by Frontier's Chief Executive Officer Johnny Watts and Chief Financial Officer Alex Bevis, presenting and talking about those same results. If you missed our report last week, you'll find it linked on screen now, but to give you a very quick summary, financially speaking, Elite Dangerous did very well in the first half of financial year 25. That's the 1st of June 2024 to the 30th of November 2024, doubling the amount of revenue that it brought into the FDev coffers over the same time last year. That increase in financial health for the game is certainly due, in no small part whatsoever, to the introduction of paid early access to new ships, but the equation is a degree more complex than that, in that the new ships are just part of the story. The other features that stuffed the Elite Dangerous 10th anniversary year to the gills, including the engineering rebalance, the introduction of Supercruise Overcharge, the endgame in the Thargoid War and the hugely successful reboot of Power Play, have all contributed to the reinvigoration of the game itself, leading to a surge in new and returning players alike and increased engagement overall, all of which ultimately has a contributing effect on the game's financial input into Frontier. When talking about Elite Dangerous specifically, during the presentation FDev presented a slide giving a high level overview of the franchise's performance in the 6-month period covered by the report. You can see that slide on screen now, and it paints a brilliant picture of just what the game has experienced since FDev implemented their new approach to it. It also speaks directly to the overall general uptick that the game saw in 2024, but it's the graph on monthly revenue from paid DLC by Elite Dangerous, so early access to new ships and ship pre-builds, as well as paint jobs and other cosmetics etc, that is particularly interesting. Moving from left to right, the first spike in revenue we think coincides with the arrival of the Thargoid surface Spire sites around October-November 2023. So that's an update to the game delivering new content that is generating a measurable uptick in revenue from paid DLC. The next sizable uptick is the launch of the Python Mark II into early access at the start of May 2024. There's then another spike around the early access launch of the Type 8 in early August, and I'm guessing you can now clearly see where the Mandalay and Powerplay 2.0 arrived on that same graph at the end of October. There's obviously no more granularity in the figures available than we've shown, so we'll likely never know how much of that revenue spread is purely Mandalay's and how much is driven by pure engagement off the back of the excellent Powerplay 2.0. But still, that huge uptick of revenue as soon as a new exploration vessel is released is certainly fascinating and worthy of discussion in and of itself. The introduction of a combat vessel and then a trader vessel produced a relatively comparable uptick each, but when a new exploration ship enters the field alongside a very significant content drop, suddenly 3 times as much revenue arrives. You have to imagine that those figures are now being dug into and analysed further at FDev Towers. The slide finishes with a single summary line saying, quote, "With a growing player base, Elite Dangerous is looking well positioned for the future." End quote. We've linked to the publicly available financial presentation in its entirety in the description below this video if you want to take a look for yourself. It is only 20 minutes long and it's obviously occasionally rather dry in places out of necessity given the subject matter it's delivering, but it is interesting nonetheless if you want to garner a degree of understanding of where Frontier as an entity sits right now, given their well documented challenging times recently. For us here however, the truly fascinating thing about the presentation is not the glimpse at FDev's spreadsheets, the financial market jargon or raw numbers, but rather how the board at Frontier themselves are now speaking about their venerable and much revered genre defining space simulator. Here at the Buur Pit we've been covering the ups and downs of Elite Dangerous for over 6 years. In that time, particularly the last 2 or 3 years, Elite Dangerous has rarely gotten a mention in any financial reporting that FDev has done. It certainly hadn't earned its own truly meaningful segment in any financial video presentation from the board beyond the problems that the challenging launch of Odyssey introduced for the game. That trend however has definitely been given a moment of pause at the very least with the report this week. There's any number of quotes by Johnny Watts himself from the presentation that I could pull out. Quote, "I'm very happy to be talking about Elite Dangerous," end quote, or quote, "Elite is really part of the fabric of Frontier, it's got a lot of heritage and history," end quote. They, in and of themselves, are refreshing and hugely encouraging to hear from FDev after what have been some very challenging and somewhat lean years to say the least, but the enthusiasm and support for Elite Dangerous only goes on from there. At one point, when talking about how 2024 played out for Elite Dangerous, Johnny Watts says, quote, "I'm really pleased that by investing in the narrative and additional content, we've seen that player experiences really resonate with our players, and in fact it has reinvigorated the monthly active users." End quote. That's direct boardroom level confirmation, as though it were needed at this point, that the game is indeed drawing in and engaging more players again after a few years of some worrying attrition in that regard. It may seem obvious, but for the boardroom, and indeed anyone outside the boardroom who loves the game and wants to see it succeed and continue to expand and fulfill its potential, that expansion and retention of monthly active users is absolutely key. Ultimately, it's a very simple equation. If players are enjoying being in the game, are enthused about the game, and, really importantly, have a firm belief that the game is going to be around for them to play tomorrow, and that it's going to continue to expand and to grow and to add new features in the future, then they will gladly spend some arcs on that game, secure in the knowledge that they're going to get their money's worth out of that real money investment. Indeed, Johnny speaks quite directly to this very point about the meaningful monetization that Elite Dangerous introduced last year, saying, quote, "It's really nice to see the players engaging with that. I think everyone understands again it's all about looking after this game. If players can invest some of their money in new ships, we can invest that back in new content, and this is really propelling the uptick that you are seeing." End quote. Johnny continues, quote, "If you get it right and give the players what they want, these new experiences, they will reciprocate by investing in that PDLC." End quote. I wouldn't want to presume to know the mind of Frontier, but from our experiences here over the last few years, watching every nuance and twitch that Frontier make, the presentation from them this week, certainly to us, seemed to paint a picture of a company caught slightly off guard by the successes that they saw from Elite Dangerous last year. We've bemoaned on this channel many times before about how Frontier would do well to treat Elite Dangerous like the live service game that it and its player base want it to be. Whereas Frontier, a company with a slightly more traditional boxed product heritage to them, perhaps haven't fully understood how to best look after something like Elite Dangerous in the brave new world of the interwebs. When talking about how much revenue Elite Dangerous made in the same period during the last financial year as opposed to financial year 25, Johnny Watts described the difference as, quote, "quite profound," unquote. Further adding that, quote, "I hope there's many more years to come on Elite. I think it's a great bit of success and I'm very pleased to be talking about it," end quote. The first Frontier Unlocked livestream of 2025 is now just 1 month away on Wednesday the 26th of February. The community team have already announced at the tail end of last year that they would be laying out the plans for the game's year ahead on that livestream. Given what we now know about how the board are feeling about the potential of Elite Dangerous at this point in its life, it's going to be one fascinating watch. Will you be contributing to this week's new community goal? Are you encouraged to hear Frontier's board reaffirming their commitments to Elite? What are your plans for when the Trailblazers update launches? Let us know in the comments below. That's it for now. Thanks very much for watching. We'll be back later this week with more videos. Until then, 07 Commanders, follow the greens on the way out and do keep clear of the toast rack. We very much look forward to seeing you next time.